Well, I'm sure you've been watching the state capture inquiry live here on Newsroom Africa over the last few days. Some of the stunning testimony that's come out of it. Now it appears it's costing us a fortune. In some cases, some of the senior counsel involved are costing the Commission up to 38,000 rand a day. To discuss this further, I'm joined by the independent analyst Khaya Sithole. Khaya, good afternoon to you. Look, we all know lawyers are expensive, but even by their standards, this is quite a big amount.
Yeah, I think obviously the one thing that people have always said about all the issues that are unraveling here is that the undisputed winners of everything that's gone on in the state over the past 10 to 15 years are the lawyers themselves, who seem to never be able to lose, because whether you're trying to defend someone who's done something wrong, a lawyer gets paid, and whether it's the state trying to unravel what has done wrong, the lawyers are getting paid. So it's not surprising that they're coining it, but I think maybe a lot of people are surprised by the daily rates that are actually being cited in this report by the Sunday Times.
The Commission has cost around 700 million rand up until this point. It's a big question. Has it been worth it?
Look, I think the 700 million rand, which is actually much closer to 800 million rand now, should also be counted as the cost of the losses that we as citizens have suffered under the guise and the guidance of the politicians that we've chosen. And I think obviously it is probably the one cost that has a particular return, in that the return is that we at least get insights into how the state operated for the better part of the past 15 years. And with that understanding of what has happened, we may be better off in the future if, of course, recommendations are put to the table and those recommendations are actually implemented. So the test of whether there is an ultimate benefit is unfortunately not going to happen at an interim stage, but much later on, not even when the report is written, but when we reflect on whether that report ever actually had any impact on how the state is run, which is something that might take years for us to be able to reflect on.
Well, I mean, I suppose it comes down, in preparation for this interview, came up with sort of two tests of whether it would be worth it. The one, I think a lot of people, rightly or wrongly, would feel better if some of the people that we've seen evidence being led against, so people being implicated, were actually charged and ended up being convicted. That might be the one thing. The second thing is whether it stops state capture in this way from ever happening again. And as you say, you've probably got to wait about 50 years before you know if that's the case.
Yeah, I think the first one that you referred to probably gets us the benefit of optics. And when I say it's the benefit of optics, it's the fact that if people do get charged and they do get arrested, it will give us some satisfaction that at least there was some particular conclusion there. But of course, at the end of the day, those people, most of whom have been held to account already, are probably people that are no longer in the position to do the type of things that they're being accused of now. So the question that we should be asking is, who has replaced them? And are the people that are now in those positions still undertaking the same activities that we've been seeing being unraveled in the State Capture Commission? Because if we've simply replaced the figureheads with a new set of thieves, then actually we haven't achieved anything much. So the reason I say that that first victory will be a victory of optics is that for me it's still a matter of, have you then dealt with the underlying conditions that enable and entrench these people to really commit these acts of treason in the first place? And of course, this is all going to be much easier to evaluate in the long run. And as you say, perhaps it will take us a 50-year analysis to look back and say, well, now with the benefit of hindsight, having seen what happened in the first 25, 26 years of our democracy, contrast that against the next 25 years, which will obviously, with the State Capture Commission being the midpoint, do we think that things are better? Do we think that things have improved? And if we feel that things are much better, that the state is run much more efficiently and less corruptly, then of course there will be a particular benefit. But this is definitely not something we can answer in 2020, particularly when the commission is underway. Think about it, they may still end up with a report that gets discredited and gets thrown out like the Seriti report. So we must still create latitude to the fact that the report itself may turn out to be something that actually has no standing if somebody successfully challenges it and it gets reviewed like the Seriti Commission.
And Kai, I would suggest that no matter what we say, no matter what happens now even, the Zondo Commission has succeeded in doing one thing. It's changed the narrative. In other words, we're seeing now politically some people under immense pressure. They weren't necessarily under that kind of pressure before the Zondo Commission. The first example would be the former President Jacob Zuma.
Look, I think obviously the unfortunate situation with the former President Jacob Zuma is that this comes at the intersection of many other issues. let's face it, his primary concern at this stage is not a commission which, as I said, may not even issue binding recommendations at the end of the day. His primary concern should be the litigation that is already pending in front of the courts. And I think what is happening here is that when we speak of the pressure, I suspect that the pressure comes primarily from that rather than the commission, because we know our sad history is that commissions do convene and they do issue reports, and it's still up to the political heads of their day to decide what to do with that particular report. So I wouldn't think that this is the thing that stresses him more than any other things. He has a lot of other issues on his plate, and a commission that issues a report that is still subject to the whims of the ANC on what happens with that report, it's probably not the type of thing that's really giving him sleepless nights.
Khaya Sithole, thanks very much indeed. Do appreciate it. Independent analyst there.